In the heart of 17th century Hungary, shrouded in mist and shadow, stood Lactis Castle. Within its cold, stone walls lived a figure of immense power and wealth, a woman whose name would echo through history, whispered in tales of terror. Countess Elizabeth Bathory. This is a historical summary of the story behind the legend, an attempt to unravel the threads of fact and folklore that created the infamous Blood Countess. Elizabeth Bathory was born in 1560 into one of the most influential noble families in the Kingdom of Hungary. She was intelligent, well-educated, and by all accounts, a formidable woman. At the age of 15, she married Forinsnad, another powerful noble, known as the Black Knight of Hungary for his military prowess. While her husband was away at war, Elizabeth managed their vast estates with an iron fist, overseeing dozens of towns and villages. For many years, she was simply a powerful aristocrat, a woman of status in a turbulent time. But as the years turned into decades, a darker story began to form in the whispers of the local peasantry. It started subtly. A young servant girl would disappear from a nearby village, hired to work at the castle, never to be seen again. At first, these disappearances were dismissed. Life was harsh, and people vanished for many reasons. But the stories persisted, growing more frequent and more unsettling. Rumors swirled through the taverns and markets, tales of unspeakable cruelty within the castle walls. The local villagers lived under a cloud of fear. They warned their daughters away from the castle's shadow, praying they wouldn't be the next to be summoned. The whisper spoke of a countess who seemed to defy age, whose vanity knew no bounds. But for a long time, these were just stories, the kind of dark folklore that often surrounds the powerful and isolated. No one dared to accuse a Bathory. The turning point came when the rumors began to involve the daughters of lesser nobility. While the disappearance of peasant girls could be ignored by the authorities, the loss of aristocratic ladies could not. The whispers finally reached the ears of King Matthias II. The complaints were too numerous, the rumors too persistent. He had no choice but to act. He appointed György Thurzo, the Palatine of Hungary, a man who was both a relative and a political rival of the Bathory family, to lead an official investigation. This was a monumental step. Investigating someone of Elizabeth's stature was almost unheard of, a clear sign of how serious the situation had become. Thurzo and his men launched their inquiry in 1610. They began collecting testimonies, interviewing hundreds of people from the surrounding villages and towns. What they claimed to uncover was a pattern of systematic cruelty spanning years, even decades. Witness after witness came forward, their accounts painting a chilling picture of life and death within the Countess's service. According to the records of the investigation, over 300 witnesses gave statements. They spoke of young women lured to the castle with promises of well-paid work, only to fall victim to the Countess's sadistic whims. These testimonies formed the backbone of the case against her. The sheer volume of matching accounts from different people in different locations was staggering. On December 29, 1610, Thurzo and his soldiers arrived at Lactis Castle. Legend says they caught the Countess in the act, but historical records suggest a more calculated move. They placed Elizabeth under immediate house arrest. Several of her closest servants and alleged accomplices were arrested and taken for interrogation. The trial that followed was swift and sensational. However, Elizabeth Bathory herself was never put on a public trial. To try and execute a member of such a powerful family would have created a massive political scandal and disgraced the nobility. It was a line the authorities were unwilling to cross. Instead, her alleged collaborators faced the court. 4 of her most trusted servants were tried, and based on their confessions, likely extracted under torture, they were found guilty and executed in early 1611. For Elizabeth, the punishment was different, but in some ways, more terrifying. By order of the king, she was condemned to a solitary confinement within her own castle. The sentence was absolute and brutal. She was walled up in a set of rooms in Lactus Castle. The windows and doors were bricked over, leaving only a small slit for food and water to be passed through. She was to live out the rest of her days in total darkness and isolation, a prisoner in the very fortress where she had once held absolute power. Elizabeth Bathory remained in this self-made tomb for 4 years. She was found lifeless in her stone prison in August of 1614. Death was as quiet and lonely as her final years had been. In the centuries since her death, the story of Elizabeth Bathory has grown into a monstrous legend. The historical figure became intertwined with folklore and the facts blurred with fiction. The most famous tale, that she bathed in the blood of her victims to retain her youth, is a detail that only appeared in print more than a century after her death. It's likely a later embellishment, a Gothic flourish added to an already dark story, transforming her from a cruel noblewoman into a supernatural vampire-like figure. Historians today still debate the case. Some argue that the number of victims was wildly exaggerated, and that the trial was a political conspiracy orchestrated by Thurzo to seize the Bathory family's vast wealth and land. Others believe the witness testimonies, pointing to the consistency and sheer number of accounts as evidence of her guilt. Was she a serial killer, a victim of political conspiracy, or something in between? The complete truth is likely lost to time, buried with her in the soil of Hungary. What remains is a powerful and unsettling story about the abuse of power, the nature of fear, and how history can be shaped and twisted into legend. The tale of the Blood Countess serves as a dark mirror, reflecting our own enduring fascination with the monstrous and the thin line that can separate a human from a monster. Thank you so much for joining us on this journey into one of history's darkest chapters. If you find these historical deep dives fascinating, consider subscribing to the channel and turning on notifications. We have many more stories to uncover together. Thanks for watching.